Hey! So this video is in both English and Spanish, so if you want the audio in Spanish, you can go ahead and click the settings. Please forgive my Spanish, I am from the Balkans, so it's gonna sound a little weird. Now then, Mexico. Located in the center of the American continents, Mexico is the 14th largest country in the world. With the United States to the north, Belize and Guatemala to the south, and the ocean to the east and west, Mexico is a country with much to offer. Fun fact! I accidentally stole from the Mexican military one time. A true Romanian, I know. If one looks closely at the geography of Mexico, they would see dry, flat land in the north and center of the country. The Sierra Madre extends from east to west, and there are lush tropical jungles to the south of the country. With all of these biomes, Mexico has an extremely diverse variety of climates. These include hot, dry deserts, cold and dry mountains, and hot and humid rainforests. With climates so diverse, it is no wonder that Mexico is one of the highest levels of biodiversity in the world, with more than 200,000 species. Mexico is home to many different types of unique and beautiful animals, like the jaguar, the golden eagle, and the west coast rattlesnakes, which are known for their highly venomous nature. With that background knowledge, how did Mexico become what it is today? Well, we need to do some history. The Mexico of today is the inheritor of many of the ancient cultures that lived in its territory. From the Olmecs, the Mayans, the Zapotecs, to the Teotihuacanas, the Toltecs, and the Aztecs. Many of these cultures emerged, flourished, and declined, leaving their cultural legacies in the land that will become Mexico for 3,000 years, before the arrival of the Spanish in the 16th century. By the year 1500, the Aztec Empire had millions of inhabitants and spread throughout modern Mexico. However, then the Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés arrived in Veracruz in 1519. Cortés left from the island of Hispaniola with initial support from the regional governor. However, right before Cortés embarked, the governor rescinded his support. When Cortés arrived, he was welcomed by the Aztecs, who believed that Cortés was the god Quetzalcoatl, due to an Aztec prophecy that the serpent god would return that year. As such, the conquistadors were greeted with open arms. Cortés took this chance to capture the Aztec emperor Montezuma II. However, Panfilo de Narvaez had been sent by the governor of Hispaniola in order to hunt down Cortés. As such, Cortés had to abandon the occupation of Tenochtitlan and defeat the rival Spaniard. Despite defeating his rival, the Spaniard lost his grip over the Aztec Empire, and as such, war began between the Spanish and the Aztecs. Although the Spaniards were not alone, as they gathered support from other local civilizations who were unhappy with the Aztec rule. Cortés and his allies attempted to retake the Aztec capital. However, the Spaniards suffered a brutal defeat in La Noche Triste, where the Spaniards lost upwards of half their forces and most of their cannons and guns. Although this wouldn't be the end of the conquistadors, as Cortés and his troops would return with aid from Tlaxcala? Tlaxcala. And meet the Aztecs at the Valley of Otumba. The conquistadors numbered 600 with an additional 800 Tlaxcala soldiers, facing off against 20,000 Aztecs. This was the conquistadors' final stand, outnumbered 33-1. Despite the odds, Cortés would stand proud, leading the veteran conquistadors. Cortés would organize his best cavalry officers to lead a cavalry charge with the goal of killing the Aztec emperor. The Aztecs couldn't believe their eyes as the elite cavalry charged through the lines, directly for the emperor and his commanding officers, as Juan de Salamanca struck down the Aztec emperor with his lance. The Aztec army lost their command structure and all semblance of organization, as they were routed by the Spaniards. The conquistadors had defeated the Aztecs. Cortés then set to work organizing the new territory into a colony, named Nueva España. However, without knowing it, one of the greatest weapons the conquistadors would wield was smallpox. This plague wiped out millions of the conquered Aztecs, who had no immunity against the disease, which was so common in Europe at the time. By 1605, it is estimated that 24 million natives had died of the disease. Spain also worked at this time to Christianize the local population, establishing the territory of Mexico as a Roman Catholic nation for years to come, which still lives on to this day as Mexico is 83% Catholic as of 2010. Spain would rule Mexico in the Central American region for 300 years until a certain French emperor invaded Spain. During the Napoleonic Wars, the French occupation of Spain would create a moment of weakness that would be exploited by the Spanish colonies, who already wanted to separate from Spain due to the unfair colonial system that Spain instituted, which intentionally kept the colonies poor. This all culminated in a Roman Catholic priest named... Oh, Dios mío. Don Miguel Gregorio Antonio Ignacio Hidalgo y Castillo Gallaga Mandarte y Villaseñor. Whew. Anyway, he called for rebellion against the Spanish crown. His decrees became known as Grito de Dolores. This became the spark that lit the flame of the Mexican War for independence. Despite initial setbacks, including the loss of Castilla, the Mexican cause would succeed with the Treaty of Cordoba in 1821. Mexico was born. Mexico had become a constitutional monarchy. However, as no Bourbon rulers could be found, Agustin de Iturbide, a royalist rebel, would become the first emperor of Mexico. However, he would be the only emperor, as he would be shortly after overthrown as Mexico became a federal republic. Later in the same century, the Mexicans and Americans would go to war as Texas attempted to claim their own independence from Mexico. This resulted in the loss of Texas, California, and the rest of what we now call the southwestern United States. In 1862, Napoleon III grew unhappy with Mexican debt owed to France, and as such occupied Mexico, instituting a new Mexican empire under the Austrian Maximilian von Habsburg. Although this wouldn't last too long due to Mexican opposition. The presidency of Porfirio Diaz, who took over as the new president of Mexico, would set the stage for the Mexican Revolution of 1910, which resulted in the Mexican Civil War. The Mexican Civil War is crazy. Just crazy. But let me try to explain it. With anti-Diaz forces rising up against the authoritarian ruler, the federal army was defeated, and Diaz would be forced into negotiations. Diaz would be replaced with a Madero presidency in 1911. However, a few years later, in 1913, a coup with support from America would replace Madero, which would lead to a reinvigorated civil war. America then switched sides and started supporting a new coup, removing the previous leader, which led to the remaining anti-federal forces creating an alliance to try to lead Mexico, which immediately failed and escalated into civil war again. This time, the Mexicans invaded the United States, as the United States invaded Veracruz. This all led to Venustiano Carranza securing his power over Mexico, until he got couped by Alvaro Obregón a few years later. Until he got assassinated a few years later. The Mexican flag also has a very interesting history. The colors, red, white, and green, represent the colors of the Liberation Army. The coat of arms in the center symbolizes the Aztec legends that speak of a message sent by the gods to the Aztec leader. In the message, the gods tell the Aztecs that they must build their city, Tenochtitlan, in the place where they find an eagle devouring a snake on a cactus. That city is where the capital of Mexico is now located, Mexico City. Mexico City has a unique architecture with the ruins of Tenochtitlan residing within the settlement as a testimony to the past. Meanwhile, much of the existing architecture in Mexico reflects the Spanish colonial influence. Mexicans have a diverse ancestry due to conquered civilizations and the migration of the Europeans. Most Mexicans are mestizos. This means that their heritage and culture are a mix of indigenous and European traditions. However, there is a significant indigenous population that maintains many of the culture and customs of its ancestors, Zapotecs, Mixtecs, and Mayans. There are also Mexicans who have European characteristics and reflect the customs and traditions of the European countries from where their ancestors came. There are also more than 1 million Mexicans of Arab descent whose influence is seen in Mexican architecture and food. In Mexico, you can see many different styles, from indigenous dress that reflect the history of ancient civilizations, modern extravagant clothing associated with Spanish culture, and the typical costumes with wide sombreros of traditional mariachi music. Mexico is also home to a wide variety of food plants, such as avocado, guava, and many varieties of chili peppers. The Mexican economy has very productive crops, such as agave, and also has an annual income of $806 million from the oil and gas industries. Due to its large percentage of cheap labor, Mexico is one of the manufacturing powers in the production of automobiles, electronic devices, computers, and much more. Of course, this is all a very short summary of everything Mexico. And it also exists so that the Mexican cartels spare me the next time I visit on vacation. So stupid. It's so stupid. So I hope you have enjoyed this short introduction to Mexico. And now I have to record all that in Spanish. Nice.